Can't see nothing. Give me just a second. No, what's everybody that's in here? Let me get situated. Okay, there we go. All right. You turn the light on. That's weird. I'll be right back. All right. Let's do it. Day one. All four of y'all. Okay, great. All right, so welcome to the live stream for Onwa Mmuo. Today we're going to be discussing Onwa Mmuo. It is the moon that we entered yesterday. Big apologies. I should have done this one yesterday, but I didn't get to it in the proper time, so I do apologize. But nevertheless, we are currently in Onwa Mmuo, the moon of resurrection. And I have a video called Resurrection Explained that kind of breaks down the ancestral worldview as far as resurrection goes. So if you're interested, I will hopefully, or I'll try to put the link to that up. But first, I want to do the honors and break Oji. So, Okikekeruwa, Oji Abiala, Alawala, Oji Abiala, Ndiche na ndị mmụọ, ndị mbụ na ndị egede, ekelere m unu niile, Oji abịala. Oji ike ewu ọjị udo, Oji ike ewu ọjị ndụ, Oji ike ewu ọjị ike, and Oji ike ewu na Oji ike ewu ọjị ijeọma, n'ọkọ ka dị n'eke, n'orie, n'afọ, na nkwọ, ise. All right, so for those who did not understand what I was saying, I greeted all of the elements that are necessary. The creator, the earth, the ancestors, those who are living, those who are not living. I presented them with Oji. I greeted them. I gave them thanks. And then from there, I began by saying this Oji is dedicated to life. It is dedicated to, what did I say? It's dedicated to life, it's dedicated to peace, and is dedicated to Ijoma, good journeys or good travels. He said, thank you very much, Ross. And then there was another one I said, I can't remember. But then I said from there, that's how it's going to be on Ike Day, on Urie Day, on Afo Day, and on Nkwọ Day. So if you understand the 4-day Igbo calendar, you'll know what the meanings of those days are. But yeah, today we're going to be discussing Onwa Mmuo. Onwa Mmuo. This is the moon of resurrection. Mmuo is resurrection, or the return from Mmuo, return from the world of spirits. Mmuo is spirit, or a good way, or a decent way to translate Mmuo, spirit. So Mmuo is a return from the spirit and that type of thing. Onwa Mmuo is the moon of resurrection. Now, a lot of communities will have a different planting cycle. And then from there, they'll give meaning to the different moons and the different phases and processes within the planting cycle. But this is the moon for most communities. Most communities are either on, they're usually on they have different schedules, let me put it that way. But they're either one moon ahead or one moon, quote unquote, behind. And it's based on when that community chooses to do its planting. So for this particular moon, there are a few communities that are celebrating New Yam Festival. For most communities, that's going to be on the next moon. I want to say Onwana, the moon of the earth, the earth's moon. So Onwa Mmuo, right now, if you were to see it from an agrarian or an agriculturalist perspective, the seeds that you planted in the previous 2 moons are beginning to grow and germinate and so forth, with the next moon being the harvest for most communities. Some communities is this moon, but with this coming moon being the harvest for most communities, you're going to be seeing growth. You're going to be seeing resurrection. You're going to see the what you put into the ground emerging back into life. And so from there, as a metaphor, it serves as a metaphor for life itself and for the year, and for the concept of renewal and rebirth and return. Let's see. It's so interesting that this moon of resurrection, because I just explained the Rose of Jericho plant to my father, and it's called the resurrection plant. That's interesting. I don't know too much about the Rose of Jericho. If you want to give a little more detail, that'd be cool. Otherwise, we talk on Patreon, so I'll catch you I'll catch you there. But yeah, this is the moon of resurrection. So Mmuo is the process of resurrection. Now, if you've seen my resurrection explained video or our reincarnation, I keep saying resurrection, my apologies. My reincarnation video, you will understand the process that our ancestors or how our ancestors understood resurrection and how they conceptualized it based on their observations. So in the Igbo worldview, resurrection is of course, like any other, a cyclical process, right? Beginning with birth, right? So an individual is born. Well, I'll start from that point. An individual is born, you go through life, right? And as you're going through life and as you're born, you are a combination of four things. And this is going to be important to remember in explaining how our ancestors viewed reincarnation. You are chi, that is your chi. You are eke, which is your chi manifest, creation, you, right? You're your chi, your eke, your agun, and your Mmuo. Agun is also known as your Onwa. Onwa translates to a universal person or worldly person, right? So your Onwa is the one we're going to pay attention to kind of the most, because as far as the resurrection process goes, it is Onwa or Agun, depending what you call it, either or, that does that resurrection process as a whole. That's the one that returns every single time. That is the one that is the same each time. So your Onwa is known as your agun. Now, agun is associated with the inner mind or the hind mind or the what I call the universal mind. So that is your mind, the mind that you have that's connected to all things or that's connected to the universe, right? So that's one of the four parts that are essences that comprise you as a whole. So you are born, you are these four things, and what happens is you go through life. Then when you pass away, right? These four things are going to go to their separate places. So Eke, you as creation, you're going to return to the earth. In Western culture, they say ashes to ashes, dust to dust. You're going to return to the minerals and the things that comprise you, right? If you have any question, if you have any doubt that you are a part of the universe, or that you are a facet or a piece of the universe, or you are connected, the process of death is very humbling, and it'll let you see it happen in real time. You will return to sand, dust, so on and so forth. So Eke returns to Eke. It's hard to say your chi returns to chi, but for visual sake, we'll say chi returns to chi. If you understand the chi well, you'll understand why I said what I said just now. And then your Mmuo goes to what's called Ala Mmuo. Now, Ala Mmuo is interesting because some people say Ala Mmuo is not separate from Ala Mado, right? So I'm here and there's Ala Mmuo, but I can't access and see it. Normally, it's not something I can access and see, but Ala Mmuo is the world of spirits. Now, some people say it is entirely separate and it's an Imala, or within the earth, right? Imala, inside the earth, right? So Mmuo goes to Mmuo or Ala Mmuo, and then your Onyowa then begins that process of reincarnation all over again. So the first thing your Onyowa is going to do is go to Chukwu. This is how our ancestors put it. Your Onyowa goes to Chukwu and receives its mission, right? It receives its mission. And then upon receiving its mission and accepting its mission on earth, it returns back into the earth, right? Or goes to Eke. Now, when it returns to the earth, a negotiation process begins. And I'm going to talk a lot about this on my next video, which is all full explained. So first and foremost, if you're new to the channel, go ahead. I don't know if you can subscribe from here, but if it's possible, I'm not seeing the same screen you guys are seeing. I think you can. So go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already, and then hit like. It helps YouTube's algorithm recommend the channel to other people that might be interested. So hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. But your Onyowa receives its mission and returns to Eke. Now, Eke again is creation, right? Eke is creation. Eke is the chi that manifested, or the chi that brings itself, that you experience. So it's the living world. So Onyowa and chi will return there with your mission, right? And you'll do a negotiation with the earth, right? And negotiation is kind of a funny term for it, but this negotiation is more or less you making an agreement with creation to abide by a certain set of principles and rules. To abide by a certain set of principles and rules. And then from there, of course, you have your mission to also go about your mission and so forth. Now, part of this negotiation process is also where it is checked whether you were welcomed back into the world by those who are already living. Now, how is a person welcomed back into the world? The process of having a funeral. especially a second funeral or a wake keeping, hence the word. I mean, not hence, but listen to that word, wake, keep wake keeping, right? So the process of having two funerals, the burial and what we now call the wake. In most African societies, you'll see two funerals. I don't know if anybody saw this, but Tiwa Savage recently had a funeral for her father. And a lot of people were really confused because she was dancing and like having a really good time at the funeral. Her dad just died. And that celebrating, that dancing and celebrating the life of her father is, though, I mean, I'm sure she's Christian and she's not cognitively doing this, but on a cultural level, it repeats itself. That celebrating is welcoming that person back, is saying that we appreciated what we experienced when you were here. Maybe you lived a long life. Maybe you were a good person. Maybe you left behind a big and healthy family and a happy family. We want you back. We want you back. We want you back. So that celebration, that's part of those things that are decided within that negotiation within the when you're in the earth. Once everything has been hashed out, right? The thing you agree to is your offer. Is going to be your offer or offer more, your spiritual offer. And I'm going to be explaining that in the next video. It's very, very, very important. It's going to tie everything together and so forth. But that thing you agree to, the oath you take when you're upon coming to the earth. Now, you are now brought into the earth through Anna or Allah, the earth, and she will determine who your mother is going to be. Right. So she's the one that's going to determine who your mother is going to be from there. And your mother is chosen based off of that mission and that agreement, if that makes sense. So with a lot of people, for example, a lot of people whose destiny is to become a dibia, it is spread maternally. It goes through the mother, that the gene, or I'll call it the gene, but the gene, the Agon gene that a dibia possesses, comes through the mother, the maternal line. And when you are going to become a dibia, or when an individual decides I'm going to become a dibia, they actually have to go back to their maternal home and contact the offer of their mother's maternal home. Right. And so families have offer too. I'm not going to talk too much about offer in this particular live because, like I said, it's the next video. So you'll go back to your maternal home, right? And you will communicate with that offer and you'll ask its permission, or you'll let the offer know that, hey, I'm going to become a dibia, that this Agon thing has chosen me, so on and so forth. So from there, you move on and you hold on. Why people have started doing something similar too. It's called life celebrations. I think they got. I think they got tired of just being sad. I said this to my friend. Did I say to her, a good friend of mine, years ago? I said that in 100 years, the United States of America will be an African country from beginning to end, culturally 100%, and the rest of Europe will follow sway too. I said this to a good friend. Hey, y'all are wilding out. I said this to a friend of mine, that this country is going to be an African country 100%, because in my short time of living and, of course, being here, piece by piece, all of the little things that we used to do back home are now becoming normal. And then people are like, oh, like it makes you realize, oh, that's why people do it. Right. And then from there it becomes a thing. So, yeah, I see I see life celebrations being a big thing in the future. Carrying babies in the back, all that stuff, that type of thing. They're now selling, not us making fun of grieving. Get crazy. Oh man, I fell asleep on a white funeral once. Yeah, that's why they don't want to miss work for funerals. Yeah, I know that New Orleans people were laughing. Who's this rapper? Shawty Low. Yeah. When Shawty Low died, I think they took his casket to a strip club because he liked to go to that strip club while he was alive. As funny as that sounds, it's a very, very, very African concept, right? They took his body to the strip club. I think they danced on the. I don't know. YouTube's gonna shut this down. This is getting crazy. So it's a very African concept, There was that meme also with the Ghanaian dancers where they were or however that song went, and they had the caskets on their shoulder. 100% the exact same thing. So that idea of celebrating your life is welcoming you back into life and welcoming you, that Onwa, you back into the world, right? And from there, and then that's why I always say that in one thing that's different in Christianity, or like, let's say, the Abrahamic religions and a lot of the African systems, most particularly Dinani, is that your ultimate judge is your community and your family, right? The person that decides what's going to happen to you in the afterlife is your community and your family. It's also one of the reasons why it's important to use your ancestors' names when you have an altar, to specifically use their names. If you don't know their names, you can use Eke, Urie, Afo, and Nkwo. Eke, Urie, Afo, Nkwo, the 4 market days, because there's 4 days of a week, and each day that you are born is your name, right? So when I checked, I was born on Afo. And so one of my names is Afo, Nwafo. You understand? Nwafo also means like a real Igbo man. So I'll take it, That's a term that's used for a real Igbo person, or somebody who's really cultured or knows their history and things like that. Afo is associated with a lot of like tradition and family and that type of thing, because Afo is another name for Ana, the earth. And she, as far as the spectrum of like female divinity, she represents motherhood. Right? Oshimiri represents the young woman or the maiden, right? And then from there, she becomes married and becomes more associated with Ana, which is motherhood and keeping the family together and law and all those different types of things. So this is the process of reincarnation, right? And so that negotiation, that whole process, there's a way that it sounds mystical, but as you live your life and you apply these things to your life, you actually start seeing what our ancestors were referring to, or what our ancestors were saying. So it is said that that agreement that you make, so long as you hold it, you are protected to live the full span of your life. Nothing can hurt you. You are protected. That is your Mmuo is your ultimate protection. What is your Mmuo? Your Mmuo is ultimately living your truth. Right, is figuring out, hey, Chimoge Ibe, question about reincarnation. I know your family and community determine whether or not your Mmuo comes back, but is that same thing as Agun? Yes, it's for both of them. So your family and community, okay, so let's say this. You live your life, like this is the understanding of Mmuo. So here, this is me, right? I'm going to take this ring light and see if I can do it. So around me there's a light. Around me, there's an aura. You understand? Around me, there's an aura. And the further you get away from me, the less you're able to feel it or sense it. Let's see if I can put this in the right place again. The further you get away from me, the less you're able to feel it and sense it and so forth, right? So the way the analogy I always use is, let's say you're sad and you walk in the room. That aura, that sadness you're giving off is going to make everybody a little sadder, because Mmuo has a way of reacting to other Mmuo. It's very... think of it like a liquid or like water, right? So like if you put oil in water, it's going to gradually spread to the rest of the water until it becomes a mix of oil and water. It's not going to be completely oil or completely water anymore, right? So your Mmuo is like that. So when you pass, that aura, that essence is still on earth, right? It's still a part of the world, but it has to be called on. It has to be called on. Mmuo is very reactive to sounds and symbols. Right, it's very reactive to sounds and symbols. So when your descendants say your name, or when not even your descendants, let's say you become famous, when the people of the world say your name, that spirit is invoked, right? When they visit where you were buried and they give you praises or whatever, that spirit is invoked. One way that we, on a day-to-day level, that we understand this is like art, for example. Right? There's certain art that you will experience, maybe it music, a painting, a drawing, a dance, that type of thing, that when you interact with it, the spirit of the thing that created it now comes alive in you, or it enters the room, right? There are certain names that people avoid saying or interacting with at certain times because of what it's going to do to that room, because it brings that spirit back. So your family, right, is the ultimate custodian of that, your Mmuo, keeping that thing alive, keeping that essence, the part of you, the feeling part of you alive, the part that can be felt, of keeping that part alive. But it doesn't necessarily always have to be your family. Sometimes it can be friends, people in a community, so on and so forth. It doesn't necessarily have to be your family, but in the traditional setting, it would be your family, because the person that holds the Ofo, the Eji Ofo, would then be responsible for communicating with all the ancestors every morning, even if the rest of the family doesn't do it. That one particular person in the family, which is usually almost always the oldest man in the family, we'll do the honors. Chimoge, I'm supposed to, but hey, I want to thank you for your donation. Chimoge, thank you for the donation. Diatoji, Igeri, Igeto, I'm not going to do more than I can do, but Igeri, Igeto, Ise. All right, cool. Thank you very much for that. So do you become a ghost? You don't become it. It is a part of you. So it is a part of the whole of you that is left over, right? Is a part of the whole of you that is left over. One of the examples, like for example, right? And it's as much as we call this thing Igbo spirituality, it's very easy to see it done everywhere else, right? So for example, we'll look at, like, I always use this example of Osama bin Laden, right? The US military shot Osama, the official story, they shot Osama bin Laden, and they made sure that nobody knew where he was buried. Whether he was thrown in the ocean, whether he was incinerated, nobody knows. They just left it at that. Because every time people go, if they were to have built had a grave for him, and people would go to that grave and interact with it, so on and so forth, it is a means of keeping that particular spirit alive. We'll look at someone like Adolf Hitler, right? Someone like Hitler, right? In Germany, if you're drawing swastikas, so on and so forth, there are legal repercussions of that, because those symbols invoke more. Right. So like I said, when a person comes into a room, they're sad, they make other people sad. There are things that, it's a lot more complicated. It's your entire essence. Right. And you can make others feel your essence, and that feeling can invoke something in somebody else. And sometimes if they don't want that more around, you'll see the destruction of symbols. You'll see the burial of like the hiding of that person's whatever. Just a lot of things are done to avoid that particular more. In one of our group discussions, we were talking about the type of movies, like as far as Black history goes, the type of movies that get green lighted as opposed to the ones that don't, right? And that has a lot to do with what I'm talking about. There are some movies that you'll go and watch, and then all of a sudden, you might feel something that the powers that be, or maybe say the people that finance movies or whatever, don't want to be felt. There was a story about, I don't know, maybe some of you can ask your parents, or some of you might even know, they said there was like a breakout of violence when Roots first came out. Like Black kids would go to school and they were just like, they were incensed, it was ridiculous, that kind of thing, because they had never seen it depicted so viscerally and like real and on a human level like that, the way it was depicted in Roots. And so, yeah, the anger that was felt by them all of a sudden invoked them, that kind of thing. So that's what that is. That's what Mmuo is, right? It's a part of you, right? It's as much a part of you as you are a part of yourself. Mmuo is, if you see my Mmuo explained video, it's called the self-observer, right? So it's more of your left hand than it is a shadow of you. I think that in contemporary, or maybe say Western ideologies of spirit, it's more so a shadow, like a shadow of the person, but it's really your left hand, right? If you're driving, you use both of them, that kind of thing, right? You're a mix of both, right? So, but it is a part of you that stays, that can stay after. That's why also, outside of saying an ancestor's name, sometimes if an ancestor was a dancer, learning that ancestor's dance, learning the songs maybe an particular ancestor used to sing, or just every single thing that encompasses the idea of culture, right? Of culture, cultivating, right? Everything that encompasses culture is the cultivation of Mmuo, is keeping a particular Mmuo going through time. That type of thing. And that thing is, our ancestors recognize that thing as a living thing unto itself. So let's see what we got here. Would thinking about a bad experience with a person bring back the same bad feelings? Yes, absolutely. Yes. So that's Angela. Angela had asked, I think I mumbled that, would thinking about a bad experience with a person bring back the same bad feelings? Yeah, that's Mmuo, you understand? Because the thing is about Mmuo is, as you walk through the world, that essence, everything you experience and touch, it stays there. It stays there. Mmuo exists, and I'm not a physicist, but I did look into dimensions or the idea of dimensions, or the different theories that are on dimensions. And to my knowledge, a 5-dimensional object is not measured by time and space the way a 3-dimensional or a 2-dimensional or 1-dimensional or 4-dimensional is. A 5-dimensional object would be like, if I took this here and I moved it that way, if I were in 5 dimensions, every single movement I've made through time would remain. There would be every single movement I made through time. There would be a copy of it. Like I think they call them Edgerton photographs. If you want to Google them, Edgerton photograph. I probably can't spell it, but he used to take these pictures where he would slow down or speed up. I don't know the shutter speed, so that you'd see the movement of things through time and space. So that if you like fired a bullet through would have to be slowed down then. Fire a bullet at a balloon, you see the bullet move, like different replicas of the bullet, and then the different movements and that type of thing. And it's a very artistic thing, but that is a mirror or a parallel of how our ancestors understand the concept of Mmuo. So every single thing you've touched, experienced, every interaction you've had, a little part of you is left there. Just so like, let's say now, if I did this and I moved over here, there's still, this part of me is still always going to be here, right? So the reason I say all this is that Mmuo can feel the whole of your life at once. The whole of your life at once. If you were over here and you felt this way, and you were over there, you felt that way, you can always return to that place through Mmuo. You can return to that place because there's a part of you that's still there. In back home, there are certain objects that you're not allowed to destroy or break because it belongs to the Mmuo of a person that put it there. So, for example, there'll be like a random gourd on like a village path, right? And what'll happen is, kids, somebody, a kid will kick it and it'll break, or somebody will lift it up and mess with it, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of repercussions to that because it belongs to Mmuo. It belongs to a particular Mmuo. You understand? The idea is you don't mess with things because you don't know who it belongs to, that type of thing, unless you're very aware. And sometimes it's not a living person that it belongs to. Same thing applies for like certain trees, right? When a child is born, their umbilical cord or the afterbirth is buried with a seed. And then the tree that goes from there not only has their Mmuo on it, but it's their tree of life. So after a while, sometimes those people become great ancestors. And after, let's call it 300, 500, 1,000 years, even if the story is forgotten, the community knows to respect that tree. Don't break that tree. Don't cut it down. Don't climb it, that type of thing. And that's what that's about. It's respecting that particular Mmuo. So can spirits be brought back alive later? Alive is just Mmuo by itself, like brought back and start moving around. I guess that would be what the concept of zombies are, which is also an African concept, which I'm sure all of you guys know. That's a good question. Can they be brought back later? I think that's a little bit above my understanding scale. So that's something you'd have to ask like a Dibia or something like that, or a practitioner, or like a practitioner, but like somebody in the applied sciences. So let's see here. So that they say, can Mmuo die? Mmuo dies when it's forgotten. Yes. Ross, thank you very much for that question. Mmuo dies when it's forgotten. Mmuo dies when it is no longer repeated. You understand? If you let it go, it goes away. If you let it go, it goes away. A lot of the Abrahamic religions, and this is the thing that always blows my mind, is that it's not that Christianity and Islam and Judaism are different. A lot of you guys have pointed out parallels with different things, and back home, I mean, they're masters at pointing out this part of the Bible correlates with this and that, and so on and so forth. It's not that it's different. It's that the philosophy on how to interact with all of these things is different. So in a lot of these religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, you are supposed to let Mmuo go. You're supposed to let it die because the ascent to heaven, or the reconnection with God, or wherever, the Father is the connection that matters. You're supposed to let it go. It's not that Christians don't believe that Mmuo can linger, that type of thing, but you're supposed to let it go. A lot of horror movies are based off of this concept of maybe, say, a particular bad spirit, and then you don't let it go. You don't let that thing go. At the same time, that's also the why in Odinani, or in the Igbo ancestral cosmology, you don't... there are particular people who you won't, just like I said with the Bin Laden thing, you won't bury. There are particular people who you'll only give one funeral, or a very small funeral, right? And for example, we had a kid in my community. The story's going to sound sad to like an American ear, but there's context and stuff. But we had a kid in my community who he got addicted to drugs, and he eventually committed suicide. He was very young. He didn't leave behind a family, anything like that. And the elders in the community had to gather and meet with his mother and father and say, hey, we can't have a big funeral for this kid. It has to be very quiet, and we can't have 2 funerals. It has to be 1. You understand? Because as sad as his story is, you don't want that story to repeat itself. You don't want that story to repeat itself. An example, and again, I'm not, someone Japanese can help me out with this. I'm not an expert, so if I am corrected by someone who knows better, I'm more than willing to accept the correction. I have a personal theory. There's a high suicide rate in Japan, very high. It's notorious, a notoriously high suicide rate in Japan. At the same time, the Mmuo of people who commit suicide is venerated in that society, is venerated. So as that thing is venerated, it reemerges in people, and that action is done again. More, I know I said it's like a liquid, so that's one way of looking at it. It's very much like dance and music as well. It's in fact, our ancestors visualize it in a lot of the same language that you use for music. More on music, they're very similar. If you look at the way music works, right? There's a certain rhythm that's being played, and it's going to make a room dance a certain way. If you now speed up the rhythm, the room speeds up. That type of thing. It's because that essence, it syncs and it influences. You understand? So if you start playing, if I as a person am a song, and that song is played in a particular place, there's a way it's going to make people feel. There's a way it's going to make people act, right? And so that's why a lot of these things are interacted with the way they're interacted with in the different cultures. And a lot of times, you'll look at another one, you'll think that it's different on a theoretical level. The theory is the same. The theory is usually the same. It's what my philosophy is, and then how that influences how I interact with these things that differs. You understand? So tearing down Confederate statues. Angela, perfect example. How about putting up those Confederate statues, right? What more were we trying to keep? Or not we, but what more was trying to be kept alive or kept intact when those statues were put up? What was the spirit? I wanted somebody to look at that statue and feel what, or have what re-invoked in them. You understand? So Angela, perfect example, both ways. And then once it got to a point that the people who didn't want to see that had enough leverage and power and say, they started coming down. So makes you think different about unmarked graves of Black people in the U.S. Yeah, 100%. It really does. Why in South Asia they do the same dance, same temples, same deities. CS, you said why in South Asia they do the same dance at the same temples and the same deities. If you can elaborate on that, I'd really appreciate that. I'm trying to understand your question or get a little more context on your question. Want more light on stories of people coming back as ghosts, moving to another town, starting a new family. But once exposed, they disappear, stuff like that. I have a really interesting story from back home about something similar. Now, I don't know if it was my dad pulling my leg or our legs, but he was very serious when he told this story. My dad's not a particularly my dad's very practical and he's not like I don't want to say superstitious, but he's not a superstitious person, right? That type of thing. So these types of stories, they're weird coming from him. And when they come from him, I take him a little more seriously because I know that he doesn't waste words. What's the word for it? He doesn't use his words casually. So my dad was telling me that there was a concert when he was a teenager. There was a concert near our village that everybody wanted to go to. There was one particular boy in the community who wanted to go, but his parents didn't let him. I think his parents were really protective or protective of their kids and things like that. So the story went. So he snuck out the night of the concert and got into a vehicle and took off to go there. Now the vehicle ended up crashing, right? And the young man died. They buried him, everything. And a few years later, and by a few years, I mean 2000, what was it? 2000, probably 11 or 12. I don't know if I told this story in one of the videos. It's probably coming up anyway. So you guys are getting the sneak peek, I guess. So 2000, let's say it's 11. So let's say about 2011. My dad comes back from Nigeria and he's like, man, the craziest thing just happened. We all gather around. We're all listening to his stories from back home. He said that a woman from Cameroon came with 2 kids, right? And she said, hey, that she went to the mother of the man. And she says, are you? And says the mother's name. The mother says, yes, that's me. She said that, and then says the son's name. Let's say his name's Chibuzo. Oh, Chibuzo sent me here. I'm his wife. So the mother faints. The mother collapses immediately. And everybody starts freaking out. Like, they start yelling at the woman because they think she's like a scammer or like something. You just imagine you lose your son. Somebody comes back with 2 kids saying that I'm his wife. You understand? You're going to like, hold up, you know? So everybody gets like mad at this woman. It's like yelling at her, and it got so bad with people like coming at her and like, who is this person? Get out of this place right now, that she had to go to our house, my dad's house, for refuge. You understand? My dad said he knew the father when he was alive, and the 2 children looked like him. So he said, how did you know that man's name? She said that he's my husband, that he's waiting for me in Owerri, which is like the capital of my state. It's a nearby city to where I live, like 15 minutes away or so. He's waiting for me in Owerri. He says that if he wanted me to go first, then he's going to come and meet me. That he wanted to meet up with his sister there, right? That his sister called last minute. He wanted to meet up with her, but he wanted the family to go ahead and do that. Again, my dad said the 2 kids look like him. And you know, my dad's confused at this point, doesn't know what's going on. At this point, somebody wants to get the government involved, that type of thing, because the family is outraged. You know, it's a sensitive thing. And so the woman says that they've been living in Cameroon. Her husband has been very hesitant to go back to Nigeria. He refuses to call anybody or to build any type of connection. When you ask the question, he gets really suspicious. So finally, he gave up and said, all right, we're going to go see the family, because the wife was pleading and saying, hey, our children need to see where they come from, and that type of thing. And so my dad, and at this point, I think the government was getting involved with something, but my dad goes, okay, let's call your husband then, if this is really your husband. So she calls a particular number. Nobody picks up. She calls it again. Nobody picks up. You understand? So then they tell her to go back to the hotel room. Everybody goes back to the hotel room. The phone is there. No husband. The phone had the missing calls, and it even had the missing call from the sister. Right? And so the whole situation was really weird. Again, it's like 2000, let me say between 2009 to like 2011. This whole thing happened. So somebody had asked, well, I don't know how I got into this rant, but somebody had asked if can Mmuo come back, and like, or stories of that. I think that would probably be for an entire live on its own, because it's a very big subject, but that was a really interesting story as far as that goes. I hope it was interesting for everybody else. It was interesting to me. So Kelvin, thank you very much for your question. What you just said as far as people disappearing, starting families and so forth, I just wanted to share a story that was similar. Like I said, I'll probably discuss it on another live on its own. Or maybe as a topic on the Patreon. If you're a patron, you can go ahead and recommend it as a group chat thing. And let's see here. If you're new to the chat, go ahead and hit like. It helps with the algorithm for YouTube so that people who have similar interests to you can also see this and so forth. And then subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Of course, I cover Igbo spirituality, ancestral knowledge as far as cosmology goes and so forth. So if you're interested, go ahead and subscribe. See here, this is why thieves slip and fall away when they get away. Is it possible for only a person's Mmuo and not their Agon to reincarnate, vice versa? It is only your Agon that reincarnates, right? So it's only your Agon or your Onwa that reincarnates. And your Agon or your Onwa is the part of you that has your purpose. That's the part of you that comes with your purpose. It is also the part of you that is on a mind level linked to the universe, right? So when you access that hind mind or that inner mind, that's when you access that part of you that came into this world with a purpose. So a lot of people are told in order to find their purpose, they have to go within themselves. You have to go within yourself. That's why the turtle is, or the tortoise is what it is in a lot of African folklore. It's always the wisest animal because it's the animal that goes into itself. But it's only your Agon that reincarnates. Your Mmuo doesn't reincarnate. Your Mmuo comes when your presence is, when you are made present. It goes when you are not made present. One of the ways you can make a person present is by saying their name, celebrating them, just that type of thing, mimicking them. That's why a lot of ritual is, a lot of masquerades are. It is mimicking that person, and it brings that more, that feeling of that person back, right? Mmuo is also a bit of like a retainer. It keeps things. It is a holder. So a lot of what you want done in the world, a lot of your will, a lot of the will you want done in the world is held in your Mmuo, so that when your Mmuo is brought back, the people that feel it begin to do your will, or begin to do the things that you wanted done in the world. One example is my sister's good friend in back in Nigeria. She had passed away. She left behind 2 kids. But because of what my sister felt for the kids, my sister took over paying for their school fees. You understand? So that thing that she shared with the sister also is shared with the children. It became one and the same thing. So that her will, what she wanted done in the world, is done by those who feel her more, right? It's another word for it is inspiration, right? Inspiration. I think the root word spire for inspiration is spirit. It's linked to the word spirit and breathing, right? So that type of thing, it's the same thing. So, but to answer your question, I think again, it is your Agun or your Onwa that reincarnates. Your Mmuo does not reincarnate, right? You can reincarnate, right? And then the Mmuo of your previous life can be present as well, or can be made present as well. And culturally, in Odinani, they try not to have the two interact, right? So the person that is your Agun or your Onwa, the person that you reincarnate as, is not going to, like, wherever you're buried, they're not going to be allowed to go there. They're not going to, this is where you were buried in the past life. You're not allowed to go look at it. They're going to avoid looking at pictures of you. If any pictures were taken, they're not going to use any of the objects that you used while you were living. They, of course, won't live in the same home that you were living in. Sometimes there are exceptions and that type of thing. Like, for example, my father is reincarnated from his grandfather. His grandfather is Ofather, where I get my last name from. So my father is a reincarnate of him, but he is buried right next to our house. So in order for my father to go into the main compound where all the families are, he has to pass that. He has to pass the where he's buried, or where he was buried in the previous life, that type of thing. So there's exceptions if there's no option. It's not like a do or die thing, but they try to keep it separate. At the same time, your Agun or your Onwa can come back as multiple people, and it often does, right? So there are people who you were the same person as in a previous life, but just like the branches in a tree, when it came back for this life, it branched into 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And this happens very, very, very often. It's not uncommon. So I and my cousin Emeka, we reincarnated from the same person, who's a kind of a distant family member. I think I've shared it before. He was a palm wine tapper. He used to make alcohol, but we reincarnated from him, and I both reincarnated from him. And in this situation, we can't go to each other's funerals. That makes sense. We can't go to each other's funerals. If one of us is taking a chieftaincy title, the other one can't come to the event. So they try to keep a separation, right? They try to keep a separation between the two, anything that is spiritual in nature. So let me see if we got any more. I always lose my place once I start these long ass answers. So that being said, does Mmuo, I think I answered that. Is it possible for a person's Mmuo, I already said that. Would Igbo culture treat suicide differently from martyrdom? It would. So there's no suicide is always at all times not good. It's never a good thing. There's never a just suicide you're fine. Yeah, you're good. So there's never a just suicide or a suicide that was supposed to happen, that kind of thing, or like a martyr suicide situation. It doesn't happen, that type of thing. Now, you can die maybe defending your community, or you can die for a cause, but to just kill yourself for the sake of XYZ, no, that doesn't happen. So, yeah, because one of the ways to understand good and evil, or good and bad, or the moral compass, is that Odinani is life affirming. So anything that gives life or adds life, anything that gives life or adds life is good. Anything that takes away life or reduces life is bad. That's just usually how it's seen, So, hold on, wait. Let me go down. Wanting more life. Okay, I already read that one. Is there a ritual you can do to not revisit unpleasant, unwanted experience? Angela. Yeah, there are, but I'm not the person to ask. I think you'd have to talk to like a Debia, and that's that. Those are the type of things they do. So like they can apply these things. They do the surgery. So I just know where the heart is located. I can't cut you open and do X, Y, Z, so bad analogy, but still. So yeah, you'd have to talk to like a Dibia, an Onwa, a diviner, and a Babalawo if you know one, or that type of thing. You'd have to talk to somebody who's not me, in order to do that particular thing, to let go of something that's haunting you. So yeah, let's see. Thieves looking for one to get away. What do you look at? Okay, I already got there. I told you guys I always lose my place, so I probably went back. I definitely went back. When you said that Mmuo dies, how does that work? Does that mean it goes away to allow more fade from existence? Fade from existence is the best way to put it. But it fades from existence until it is called again. It fades from existence until it's called again. Think of it like heat, right? I use heat a lot in comparing Mmuo as well. If you don't do anything to bring heat into an area, the area won't be hot, right? Minusing the exception of the sun, right? So let's say you're out in the woods, you start a fire. The fire is going to do what a fire does. The essence of that fire is going to radiate onto you, right? Once that fire goes out and you move away from it, you're not going to feel that heat again until you start that fire again. So Mmuo goes away, and then when it is called again, it does what it does. Mmuo, and then Ross, I think you probably already understand this based on the conversations we've had. So Mmuo is like, let's say again, with the light I use, myself, and then the essence that radiates from me, right? And it dissipates the further away you go from me, and so forth. Mmuo radiates off me, right? If you think of Mmuo and Madonna Mmuo, right? Person and Mmuo, and then now you go to Anyanwu. Anyanwu is the Abara of the sun, right? So she's the sun. Anyanwu, most specifically the rising sun, as it said. So Anyanwu, but the term we use for Anyanwu was Anyanwu na Abara, or Anyanwu na Abara, yeah, right? So Abara is very interesting, or Abala, yeah? So Abala used to mix me up when I first got introduced to all these concepts, but there was something that clicked that made everything make sense. So the way Mado and Mmuo and Anyanwu and Abala are linked, right? Abala is the rays of the sun. So there's the sun, and Abala is the sun that you feel. But the sun is also represents wisdom, right? For example, things like clairvoyance, wisdom, sight, insights, vision. Those things come from Anyanwu, and that thing from the sun, you can also receive those things from the sun, right? You can also receive those things from the sun. So there's a sun that is out there, and there's a sun that you feel, because that's Anyanwu na Abala, yeah, or la Abala. Right now, Abala and Abara, I can't say Abala, right? I'm not from Onitsha. It's a dialect difference, right? It's a dialect difference. They're the same thing. So we speak of the Abara, right? We speak of Anna as the Abara. There's Anna, and then there's the Anna that radiates from Anna. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. So for example, now, if the sun is out, and you duck away from the sun somehow, you find a way to get away from the sun. Maybe you're in a room with no windows. You're not going to feel the Abara of the sun. Now, if you remember, Abara and Mmuo are the same thing. But if you step back out into the sun, you're going to feel it, right? So when we say Mmuo and Abara, one of the key differences is Abara is like an element, is the radiance of an element of nature, or the aura of an element of nature that maybe you can't get rid of. It's not up to you to get rid of the earth or get rid of the sun. But Mmuo is of people, right? Those are things that you're equal to. So you can get rid of those things. You're on equal footing with them. So when Mmuo dies, it's not so much that the Mmuo dies, just that there's nobody alive that's feeling it. Right. And if nobody alive is feeling the sun, then we can't say it's a hot day, that kind of thing. So I know that was all over the place. I hope it made sense. If it didn't, you can go ahead and keep asking, and I'll try to elaborate a little bit more on it. I have not eaten at all today, by the way, so I'm going to make way less sense than normal. For those connected with deities, that time actually was connected with the deities. I don't know what it means. Almost like reliving. Yes, almost like reliving an activation of an Abara. Yes, that's 100% what an Abara is. Most rituals, which everything you're going to see on a practical level, like when you see Odinani practiced, it's going to be, okay, this is what we understand about these different things. Let's work it and make it do this and make it do that, and help it, have it help us do this, and have us help us do that. And one of the things that people interact with or interface with a lot is Mmuo. You understand? There's more. So that, like I said, with like sometimes you'll see a pot in the village. It's been there for hundreds of years. You just don't touch it. And it's not going to be like in a grand display or anything. It's just going to be like a random pot on the floor. But you don't touch it. It doesn't belong to, right? It belongs to the more of that thing. But at the same time, so that knowledge, the fact that, okay, we're going to respect this thing because that more is of that person, that knowledge is also used to build laws. It is used to keep families together. It is used in farming. It is used in agriculture. It's used in everything, right? It's used in all these different things. So it's the application of this knowledge. So when you see an arushi is trying to channel or does channel the abara of a certain element of nature for human use. For human use. That's what an arushi is, or a shrine or a temple, that type of thing, right? So a lot of people think that in this situation, you would worship the arushi, but in reality, that thing is built for human use. It is built for human application of that understanding. The way a solar panel is an arushi of abala. Does that make sense? So the abala, or the abara in my dialect, the abara of the sun hits a solar panel, and you use that essence to light your home, right? That kind of thing. So yeah, but when you see a solar panel, it's not because somebody's worshiping the sun. It's that kind of thing. Now, there are certain things that we're going to do culturally that's going to make it look that way. Like, we will thank the solar panel and we'll thank the sun, that type of thing. Then from there, you get confused. You understand what you're looking at. So martyrdom, there's no more. There was an explanation of Mmuo as an example from India in Hinduism. I'm not going to say that word. I can't say it. Is a form of dance that has been done in temples for thousands of years and preserved to maintain the Mmuo. Absolutely. So when you CS, thank you for that comment. So when you see a lot of masquerades, when you see a lot of dances, that type of thing, when you see a lot of rituals, and the idea of repeating something culturally, it is to keep a certain Mmuo alive. Because after a while, a family, a community, and even an individual person, there are certain essences that you need around you in order for you to exist that may not be your own essence, right? That may not be your own essence. Because what happens is when Mmuo syncs with you, it makes you do this, and it'll make you do its rhythm. Once the Mmuo starts playing its song, yours is going to dance a certain way. Now, after growing for some time, you come to realize that dance is you. You start seeing that dance as you, but really it's not you. It's something external that's influencing you to be that way. But so much of you is built around that thing that it's fine. One of the examples is like the idea of national heroes, right? In order for us to hold this nation together, there are certain essences that we need to venerate and keep alive, because those are the things that hold this thing together. Same thing with organizations. If you join a fraternity, you're going to hear about the founder of that fraternity. You're going to hear about their story. You're going to hear about, you're going to do specific dances. You're going to do a specific stroll or step. There's going to be maybe a specific attire. All that stuff is to keep the spirit of that thing alive. Now, here's the interesting thing. You can create more out of thin air. You can create more out of thin air. You can create more. If you understand how this whole thing works, you can create a certain spirit and send it into the world to do whatever. You understand? And send it into the world to do whatever, or use it in your own self to do X, Y, Z. One of the most layman and common methods of doing this is by making a song, right? Making a song. You make a what's this one? I'm trying to think of this. There's a documentary on it's on HBO Max, and it is about Woodstock '99. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it was like it's a documentary, but it felt like a horror movie watching it. It was horrible. But there was, at the time, there was a lot of very angry, angsty music, that was out at the time, and everybody just wanted to rebel. They didn't know what they were rebelling against, Korn, Limp Bizkit. This is, on that side. And then on, our side, we had a lot, what they would call gangster rap, and like a lot of very tough, aggressive music, that type of thing. Now, this is mainly talking about the rock and roll aspect and that type of thing, right? 90s music was very aggressive. So, or had an aggressive nature or rebellious nature, just I think it's like a Gen X cultural thing. So when they now have Woodstock '99, they brought all these bands together. They thought they were going to replicate the 60s, or the Woodstock of the 60s. Now, remember, the 60s music had a very peaceful kind of hippie type of vibe. And so Woodstock had a particular vibe, free love, free whatever. Woodstock had a particular vibe because of the spirit of the era, the more of that era of the time, right? But when they did the same thing for 1999, and Limp Bizkit came on, and they had a song called I'll say Break Stuff, so I don't get demonetized. They had a song called Break Stuff, and you have this crowd of like I don't know the number. Let me say 100 million people, because that's what it looked like when you. It's just like a sea of peach. Just a sea of shirtless people, you know? And you just see this ocean that just goes on forever. And you're doing this song called Break Stuff, and you send that spirit you created into the world. They started burning everything. They started beating everybody. The girls were getting their clothes torn off, thrown in the mud, tearing down the thing. The police had to come, start trying to break up the crowd. People were jumping, like they poured over the porta potties, like the portable toilets. And they were playing in what came out and the excrement, you know, that type of thing, because again, they release that spirit into the world. So when you understand these things, you begin to see why certain cultures say, okay, don't play this song. Don't do this thing. Only do that at night. Only do this in the day, that type of thing, you know, because you can also create more from nothing. And then it animates and goes about its way. A lot of folklore, every single culture has folklore of these things, like the golem, for example, in Jewish folklore. That's what they're talking about. You know, you create this thing to defend and or do whatever, that kind of thing. So Uncle Sam is an example of created Mmuo. They call them egregores in the West, egregores. So statues. Mmuo concept sounds like the movie Coco. Big time, 100%. Michael, Coco is talking about Mmuo completely. And when I saw it, I said the same thing. Can animals carry someone's Mmuo, bring it back after passing? Can someone's agun reincarnate into an animal or plants? No, humans reincarnate into humans. Based on what our ancestors said. And then, yes, you can. So I have an animal. I have a video called Sacred Animals. It's like a two-parter. So there's like Sacred Animals, and then like, I can't remember what I call it. I'm not good with titles, but it's 2 videos on animals, on sacred animals. And the way you come into the world and you can reincarnate into multiple people, right? That same apple can reincarnate into multiple people. There's animals that are also connected to you in the exact same way, right? So if we can look at it like at one point, you guys were a single movement in time and space, and then this animal branches here, but it's still the same branch, and then you end up being another part, just like a tree. You guys are all connected. So a lot of the times when you then see like an animal sometimes you'll see an animal in your dream, but you'll know that that's your friend that passed away. Or you'll know, like, for example, and this is like a double animal thing. I had a dream where I was visited by an albino alligator, and it was chasing me, but I knew it was my dog that had just passed away. I felt it. I knew it 100%, right? And I realized that then sometimes when you're a dream, you kind of realize that there are if you have this thought, you're going to wake up because like maybe it's going to alert you too much. So I was like, okay, I have to kind of avoid that thought because it's going to wake me up. And then after a while, I couldn't avoid it. And it was gradually turning back into the dog. And I said, okay, let me not look at it so I can just stay in the moment and just spend time with the dog and that feeling, that type of thing. So more can be connected to an animal, but you do not reincarnate as that animal. Some people share their it's tough. Some people share their eke or their existence with a particular animal. Some families share it with an animal. Back home, you'll see a lot of families with like an animal that's regarded as part of their family. And a lot of back home as well, you see a lot of communities. This is more common. You'll see communities where certain animals are not allowed to be killed or hurt and that type of thing. If they enter your home, you have to respect it as a person, because the more of the abara or the Arishi of that main community is connected to that animal. So that animal and that abara are one and the same. And then sometimes you'll see certain families where a certain animal is one and the same with them, and they have a symbiotic relationship with that creature. One of the ways to know is that typically you can't hurt that creature, and that creature doesn't or can't hurt you. That's usually the way that you know, that kind of thing. So I don't know why it keeps blocking some people's posts, and I have to hit this show button. More of Nigeria's jollof rice. The more of Nigeria is stress because So see here. If a tree falls, nobody's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. Yep. Chimoge, exactly. Seems like the nature of disappearance of Mmuo is related to that question. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, me and other people were wondering what implications for white people creating as the devil. Oh man, what are the implications of people creating the devil? It depends how they interface with that spirit. It depends what relationship they have with that spirit. So, the devil is a the devil is a very funny concept because if you read the Bible, it's very hard to pinpoint one devil. It seems that what we understand as the devil seems to be this big amalgamation of people that weren't on God's side, or not people, but things that weren't. Because some people say the serpent is the devil, but then if you read like the Book of Enoch and things like that, there's then the story of the archangel, that type of thing, and then he's the devil. Okay, is he the snake then, or what? I don't know. That type of thing. Then there's a deceiver that Jesus deals with, and all these different things. So it depends, but they all combine to say the same general thing. God does only good, and all the bad stuff comes from this guy. And so it really depends how you interact with that particular concept, and your understanding of that concept before interacting with it. So I don't think the devil. This discussion about Mmuo has validated my instinct to be reverent and very reverent. That lots of people think I'm weird about this, but now I'm aware that I'm right. Cool. Sea of Peach. I don't know if you guys are like on a slower thing than me because I said Sea of Peach a long time ago. Now I'm just seeing all the comments. Maybe people are trying to catch up. Jewish people and early Christians didn't have such a thing. It only came about later. Yeah, I believe that because, like I said, this thing we call the devil. There's many. All of the devil stories in the Bible, it's very clear that they're entirely different things. They have nothing to do with each other, right? That type of thing. So like for example, anyways, I don't want to go too much into it, but yeah, I don't know if it came as a later thing to kind of answer questions about because the one thing that the Abrahamic religions have or believe in that other religions don't 100% vibe with or say, or other systems of belief and so forth, is that God is all good. So the idea that God is all good is a very Abrahamic thing, right? It's a very Abrahamic thing, right? But the way our ancestors would say it is that if there are bad things that happen in the world and there's a creator of the world, both the good and the bad comes from the same source. So there's no devil in the ancestral cosmology, right? Or the ancestral, let's call it religion, anything like that. There's no idea of a devil. A devil is a counter. If you want to tell me that God is all good, then where's all this bad stuff coming from? Oh, it's coming from that snake. Oh, okay, the apple guy. All right, yeah, we won't listen to him. That kind of thing. We'll stomp him down. All that. So, but what is very interesting too about this concept, is that you'll typically see it in religions that have the intention of spreading. They have the intentions of spreading. So it is necessary to say that God is all good so that you can convince more people to be with this God's program, right? A lot of other beliefs, be it Hinduism, a lot of the ones in Far East Asia, Taoism, Shinto, a lot of the Native American beliefs, and even the Nordic European beliefs, and the Greeks and the Romans, if you hear their descriptions of God's behavior, and you counter it with the Abrahamic understanding of God, you're like, wait, why does he keep doing all this stuff? Like, why does Zeus keep going around sleeping everybody's wife, that kind of thing? Why is Thor always smiting people, all that stuff, and yada yada yada, And the idea, or the again, it's how they approach the philosophy. The ideas are usually the same as my philosophical approach to this thing, right? All things come from God, good or bad, so God's going to show both of those behaviors, and it's also a thing that was kind of added later on in the Abrahamic religions. If you'll notice, the Old Testament God is a wild boy, So, it's a concept that came later on with like the streamlining it and the idea of Jesus and all that stuff. The Old Testament God was turning people to salt and wilding out and doing all that stuff. So. Exactly. Hey, how they say Hades and Satan are the same, because it isn't. No, Hades and Satan have nothing to do with each other. Satan is more closely related to Aphrodite. to Aphrodite or Venus, then Satan is related to Hades. You know, if you dig deep into it, like if you dig deep into it, you'll see it. One of the correlations is the name Lucifer. Lucifer means the morning star. The morning star is the planet Venus in the morning. The planet Venus, you see the morning. In the morning, you're said to be able to see the planet Venus, and it does this very sharp drop. And that drop in the old world was known as the fall of Lucifer, right? The fall of the morning star, that type of thing. So Venus, and then if you look at all of the things that are like temptation, all these things is connected to Venus. People decided to then mix it with Hades because, oh, Hades is in the underworld, and of course, so he has to be Satan because Satan was sent into the underworld. But for somebody else in the underworld, he sure was walking around doing whatever. But Abraham God says that he creates good and evil in the Old Testament. People just don't know what's in the book. Yeah. If you actually read it, you're like, oh, okay, it has nothing to do with what's being said. But then again, there's what's written, and then there's like, okay, I need to spread this thing, right? Like when you watch a movie trailer. Yeah, I don't want to get into like this isn't a disrespect thing because there's a lot about Christianity that I admire and there's a lot that's phenomenal. And if it were foolishness, it wouldn't have taken over the world, right? But you know, Christianity is very much a movie trailer for Judaism. So you gotta watch the movie trailer, it's like all the good stuff. Oh man, Jesus is really cool. Then like you open the book, he's like, yo, he turned who into what? He told who to sleep with what? And that kind of thing is a whole different thing, you know, that type of thing. So it's like a movie trailer for it, I say. But it's not a disrespect thing. Both systems are incredibly wise, you know, and even as people start looking into their ancestral beliefs and so on and so forth, don't dismiss wisdom from different places. Try not to dismiss wisdom from other places. It can only enrich you. What somebody chose to do with it has really nothing to do with you. You can choose what you do with it and so forth. So just offshoot of ancient Canaanite religion, yes. And then, you know, Islam, all that stuff. That's why I say I always say like Abrahamic Middle Eastern cosmology, because that's what it is. So the Eurasians link Satan to Venus. Let's try to get off the Eurasians and the Satan and maybe later on as the channel, you know, after some time, I'll look into talking about that. But there's enough about that, all that stuff out there. That's not my job. Not trying to be rude. I apologize if that came off as rude. I grew up around Hellenists. People definitely do not understand Greek deities. No, there's a lot of wisdom in the Greek understanding of the world, and you know you'll see a lot of correlations with a lot of things that our ancestors were saying as well, and so forth. There's a lot of wisdom there. Now it gets preserved as these kind of fun and interesting stories. If you dig into those stories, there's a lot happening there. You'll understand this is not a story. There's something to this. Same thing with a lot of the stories in our own belief system and our own ancestral systems and so forth. In a lot of my videos, I'll try to add a story. The story is going to look one way at one level, but if you dig and if you understand what each of those symbols mean, and you go to the next layer and you're willing to think, okay, what relationship do these things have with each other, and so forth, you'll then start seeing what's being actually said, right? Sometimes you can't give people raw, let's call it wisdom, right? Some people will take in wisdom. People take in wisdom at different levels. There's a book, Leopards of the Magic Dawn, and the author does a phenomenal job of highlighting this particular concept, right? That is something that our ancestors believed. Our ancestors had this chain of command for how wisdom is dissipated into the world, right? And you'll notice a lot, everything like there's this constant comparison to waves in Odinani or Igbo cosmology, Igbo religion, so forth. So at the beginning is the creator, right? The creator, right? After the creator is nature. So the creator expresses its will and itself through nature, right? So that if you look at nature, Eke, you will understand Chi, the creator. Chineke, that's where you get the Chineke thing from, right? One's a reflection of the other. If you look at my reflection in the mirror, you will see me. If you look at this video of me, you're looking at me. You understand me, right? Even if I'm not in the room with you, that kind of thing. So that's Chineke, the idea of Chineke. Not saying that I'm Chineke. So the creator expresses itself through nature. Nature then expresses itself through what he calls the debia, right? So there are certain people who are able to look into nature and read what is happening like you would read a book. They can read what is happening like you read a book. After nature, now the middle ones get foggy. I'm going to look back into the book and see if I can break this down in a video. But after nature comes, I think he said story, right? Or what was it? Like stories, right? You understand stories. So for example, now you take wisdom from nature, it is given to the debia. A lot of times if a debia talks to you or tells you exactly what's on their mind or exactly as it is, you as somebody who's not a debia, it might not make sense, or it might sound like gibberish, or it might sound strange. A good way to a good example is a lot of times like let's say a musician makes this phenomenal work of art, and then you ask them, like, and the thing is, like, well, I'm a big Nas fan, and if you ever seen an interview with Nas, you'll understand kind of what I'm talking about. When you ask them, what was going through your mind when you're doing this, you're all listening to it, and they'll tell it to you. It doesn't even sound like they made it. Like, it sounds like it just passed through them. Like, I was just chilling, and we just started doing yada, yada. They can't really explain how the thing happened, but it came through them somehow, right? So the next layer, some people don't receive information at that debia level, at that raw level, right? So another example is like scientists. A lot of times, if like a scientist was talking to you, scientists that understand this subject very well in his research, it just says exactly what was coming out without analogies and parables and all these things. It may not make sense to somebody who's not in their discipline. So after the debia, and a debia is a scientist, so there's not just debias, there's a lot of people that exist in this space. After that space is story, right? So there are people who have the ability to take that wisdom and turn it into story, so that if you listen to this story, you listen to the debia, who then listens to nature, who then listens to God, right? And then after that story level, I think the next one was song and dance. After song and dance, it was like proverbs. And then after proverb, it was poetry, right? So it's this thing that a lot of times when you hear this little proverb, it takes you all the way back down that chain, back to God, right? Or back to a truth about the universe. That little proverb will take you all the way back over there. Sometimes you'll watch a dance, like a cultural dance, and that little dance will take you all the way there. But you as a person, sometimes you're not trying to hear the technical yada yada of it. You want to see the dance, and you see the dance, and you pick up that thing you pick up the essence of that thing, or the whole of that thing, even from just that dance, right? There are people who can look at a painting and tell you this extremely complicated thing. And another person will look at it and it's maybe not the same, right? But then if that person maybe approaches it from a debia level and is investigating what's being spoken about and so forth, they can then give you that talk, because that's where they interact with it. So different people receive different types of information at different levels. And he did a really good job of illustrating that in the book, Leopards of the Magic Dawn. It's in the library, in the medicine library at patreon.com/the-medicine shell. Though I think it's also free online somewhere. If you type in Leopards and Magical Dawn, you might be able to find it online. Derek, you're good. I understand. I missed some comments. Not as many as I thought I did, though. Rudimentary, maybe unrelated question. If our ancestors reincarnated when they die, what part of our ancestors' souls are we communicating with when we're communicating with them? With Mmuo. Yeah. So when any type of ancestral work, altars, that type of thing is Mmuo. That's what you're interacting with, is Mmuo. So Cynthia Ojiabwe, thank you very much for that question. There's still non-Western Christianity. Yes, just colonizers that messed it up. I want to learn more about it later on. Yeah, looking into like Gnostic beliefs, Coptic, even the Eastern Orthodox Church will give you different perspectives. The Ethiopian Church will give you different, which is linked to the Eastern Orthodox, will give you different perspectives on the whole picture of the cosmology that Christianity is rooted in. Now, to my understanding, the root of all of it is Kabbalah. And if you understand Kabbalah, if you look into Kabbalah and you look into Odinani, it's very difficult to say that one is different from the other. And now I'm not of the opinion that it's a common origin thing. I just think they're both talking about the same thing, right? So if you're standing in Israel and I'm standing in Abo Mbise, and we both are describing the sky, we're going to say similar things. We're going to say similar things. So they're all rooted in Kabbalah. So if you want to look at the core of all of it. Look into Kabbalah, look into a lot of the old Semitic religions and so forth. You'll learn some really interesting things. I didn't know that. I mean, maybe somebody who's Muslim might be offended by this, but I didn't know, like, for example, Allah has a wife, that kind of thing. There's a lot that gets shaved out and refined and that type of thing. Okay, we're gonna put it on the market this way so it can spread faster and that types of thing. So, Abrahamic God would mow down. Yeah. Actually, a different question. Do Igbo people have anything like astrology, beliefs in planets, and how they impact us? Yes. So, yes. Now, the astrology aspect of it, I'm not that well versed in. And the reason I say I'm not that well versed in is because I've seen it at one source. I only have one source for it. And typically, before I say something on this topic range, I want to see it in two different unrelated places. Because people, a lot of people will say different things, that type of thing. So I typically wait to see it in two different unrelated places. So I'll speak on it once it's reconfirmed elsewhere. What I can tell you is there is an astrological or an astrology, an astrological understanding and that type of thing. And you see elements of it in different parts of and different in other places too. Like, and if you understand some Albara, you'll then see that there's something going on as far as like constellations and so forth go. But I have to see it concretely in two different places before I can speak on it with authority or with that type of thing. So but as far as stars go, when you are born into the world, and I think I should have said this earlier, right? So Eke is more than just your body, right? Eke is this wide pantheon of things that make you, right? That all come from your chi, right? So Eke encompasses trying to think of something like, for example, that animal, the animal link that I was talking about. That's Eke, your family you're born into. That's all part of your Eke, that type of thing. But one of the things that your Ofo, that Ofo more that you're born with, the Ofo that you're born with, that's part of that Eke, that thing that Eke gives you. But your Akaraka, I'm sorry, I keep thinking of things as I'm talking. I keep thinking of it, which is Akaraka is like your destiny. Or like that type of thing. But there's more than destiny, but I'll go into that. Watch Nechuku explain the video. Nechuku explains it. But each person is said to have a star in the sky that is theirs. Babando. Each person has a star, right? And that star is linked to you and linked to your destiny. So a lot of times, maybe in Nollywood movies and things like that, you'll hear people saying, "Oh, this person's trying to steal my star," so on and so forth. Even people that are Christians will say that, in the damn church, So there's a star that you are linked to. Right, everybody has a star, and that star is emblematic or contains. It's not like a container that holds it, but it's a part of. It's how that Eke, that you as a part of creation, expresses itself. So when I say Eke, I do a disservice by saying like your physical existence. Yes, it is your physical existence, but there's more to your physical existence than meets the eye. There are things that you are linked to that you don't know. There's your star, it's your destiny, it's your Akaraka, all these different things that all come together to make you, like, you as a universe. You as a universe, Eke is the universe. Nechuku, she's the universe. So you in yourself are also a universe, right? And then as you age and so forth, it spreads and spreads and goes out, just like the universe we live in as well. So what I can confidently tell you is that everybody has a star that is linked to them. And our ancestors say that there's a star for every single person that has ever existed and everybody that will exist, right? So the universe, the script of the universe has been written and it's already in the stars. So yeah, that's the understanding. But as far as, yes, let's focus on Igbo cosmology. Homegirl healer, Beataji, Igeto, Igamu, Igade, Ise. So yeah, so there's a star that's linked to you, right? And there are stars for people who have not been born yet, and there are stars for the people that have been born already. But the script has already been written in the sky, right? So it's like you're receiving a book. All of the letters and words are all in there already, right? It's time where you as the reader have to then unravel it. It's all good. Abrahamic religion. Okay, we're gonna go off of that. I heard Kabbalah is closed practice based on where. Yeah, Kabbalah is a closed practice. I think that there was they have something within Kabbalah where it got opened up. So now it's open to the public. And that started, I think, in 2012, but I could be wrong. But Kabbalah, they say that you don't start studying Kabbalah till you're 40. I completely understand why. So as far as all these things, I'm kind of like giving you guys the cheat code, because you don't learn. People always talk about, oh, my parents didn't teach me this, or we didn't learn this, yada yada, back home. These things, ordinary is learnt as it is experienced, right? So my father is now the Onwa holder for our extended family, for our whole clan, right? And he wasn't taught what to do with it until it was handed to him, right? He wasn't taught what to do with it until it was handed to him. For my traditional wedding, I wasn't taught how to do a traditional wedding till like in the middle of the wedding. Like in the middle of the wedding is when I was taught that type of thing. And you'll notice this is how culture unravels back home a lot. And it used to kind of aggravate me. It's something I didn't like. But as I get older, I come to understand why that's important. And I come to understand that even all these things I'm discussing, you don't teach somebody this who has not had a child. That's what we say. These things that I'm talking about. So I'm gonna go back home. Someone's gonna beat me up or something. I don't know. But you typically, let me say typically, there's a lot of things that you typically don't teach somebody until they have a child. Once you have a child, then we begin. We'll then unlock the keys. A lot of these are kept in particular organizations and societies. You have to take certain oaths in order to then learn them and so forth. But to me, it is important because we've reached a point where that structure, my own ideology, that structure is designed for people that kind of have the ability to see this, to experience it. So maybe you see a masquerade, but then when you get to a certain age, what's going on in the masquerade is explained to you. But if you don't get the chance to see it, or you never get a chance to see it, you're not even going to ask, that kind of thing. So yeah, so they're I have my own reasons why I teach it, but some people say that you don't teach these things to people until they have children. So yeah. In Ghana, the star would be called, in parts of Ghana. Yeah. Bionics. Yeah. I think I've heard the same concept in Ghana as well. Thanks for answering the question. Sorry, may have been covered. No. Just ask away. We're all just hanging out. This is like a no stress stream. It's not, ask anything. It doesn't matter. Ask whatever. What counts as nature and Igbo spirituality? Same as nature is nature. So nature is the world. I think that the only difference you'll see with like contemporary Western thought and African thought is that humanity is separate from nature, and African thought, humanity is not a separate thing from nature. It's all the same thing. So I say that to say that something that is like, for example, this bowl or this container is no longer a part of nature because it's been touched by humanity. This is the Western way of thinking, right? So it's now it's no longer natural. But the African understanding, or the understanding of Odinani, is that it's still a part of nature. Even if another part of nature, decided to change the shape of it, it's still wood. You understand? It's still wood. So there's a proverb that goes with that, and I'm not going to remember it off the top of my head, but there's a proverb that explains that very well, and is where I learned that particular idea from. So there's no separation between human action and humanity and nature. We are a force of nature, even when we're doing things that we like to deem as unnatural, that kind of thing. Like the house I'm living in is just a pile of sticks, right? It's a pile of sticks, some chalky kind of sand, and paint, which is also more chalky sand, So this is no less natural than an anthill, So because it is an ant, that's all it is, an anthill. Does mean a lot. For what it's worth, someone separated from their African culture by transatlantic slave trade has enduring effects. Yeah. So yeah, I saw the necessity to bring these ideas and to bring all of us together in the spirit of learning, orally and regardless of age or whatever, because, and it's not like nothing's going to happen if you teach people things, but it's typically taught as you experience it, and it is typically taught after, like I said, after you have children. But for a lot of people, that's not even going to be an option, So yeah. Wow, I wish you would remember that proverb. Yes, I wish I would remember the proverb too. I wish I would remember the proverb too. So, but yeah, I can't right now. So, all right, don't tell me we're out of questions. We're out of questions. So, a few things. So, anyways, yeah, I think I was spiral so far off topic. So, this is Onwa Ilo Mmuo, the moon of reincarnation. moon of reincarnation. So a lot of the things that we planted in the year, we're seeing germinate and come back. Now, during the planting moon, I said that all of us, let's all try to set a goal. And on the new moon, I know some of you are on the new yam for Iri, we're all going to celebrate these things. We're all going to give our different stories. Like, okay, the thing I planted was maybe I was trying to start a business. I got it registered. We're ready to go. Maybe I was trying to go on more dates. I've been on 3 dates since then, so on and so. Whatever the goal is that you're planting into the earth, right? I think it was for Onwa. It was for Onwa. We planted something into the earth. We planted something that we wanted to see happen. Now, at this point, if you followed along, right? If you followed along with this, what we were doing as a community, you are going to start seeing the budding and the germination, or maybe the growing of this thing, so that by the next moon, Onwa, when we celebrate Iri G, or the new yam, you're going to now see this thing come out in full fruition. So I hope everybody, the people who participated, hope the people that chose to participate have kept with the thing that they promised themselves that they would make a part of their reality, and that we would all bring to the table and celebrate for the harvest. I hope that everybody's still on board. That if they're not, then this is a reminder. Of course, it's not too late. This is the beginning of a moon. Actually, I did this one late, so I'm a day late. You got 27 days to get to it. So you got 27 days to get to it. If New Yam comes, I don't know if you guys have seen those pictures from the Uburu blog, where it's like the different yam barns from Igbo land from back in the day, and you see how people would like build whole walls out of it. They'd really show you what they did. I want to see what you guys did. I want everybody to see that type of thing. And I got a big announcement that I want to make. It's something that I've been working on, but being able to say I'm planting it this moon, and I'm focusing, I'm watering this thing. I'm going to make sure that it comes to fruition by the time. Having you guys keep me accountable really helped it kick into gear. So I'm a huge announcement for Iri G, and I'm looking forward to you guys being there. Now for Iri G, for New Yam, I'm going to have a stream. I still have to pick what day we're going to do it. I'm trying to confirm some guests, right? So once they confirm what works with them, and I take a look and see what works with the channel, I'm going to announce the date that we're going to have our New Yam celebration. It's going to be a digital one. I'm still planning how we're going to do it. So if you guys have ideas of what we can do as far as the capacity of the technology that we're using can allow, then yeah, that would be cool. I'm also going to be having, one with my own family here and that type of thing. And so maybe I'll share a little bit of that as well. So Iri G is coming the next moon. Whatever it is that you wanted to happen this year, this next moon is when you begin to pluck the first fruits and you begin to see the first thing of it. So this is Mmuo, right? The thing you planted should be germinating and growing and resurrecting at this point. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody brings to the table for the celebration. Like I said, I have a stream in mind. I want to have guests. And I want to also hear from different people, in the crowd, in the audience, things like that. So I'm still putting things together. Interesting on Onwa Ikenga, moon dedicated to warrior sounds awesome. Yeah. I have an Onwa Ikenga stream, or Onwa Ifeke. I'm sorry. So it is called, I called it Onwa Ifeke based on my teacher, who's Ngozi Chukwuka. If you guys have seen her videos on YouTube, they're phenomenal. Ngozi Chukwuka. So she anyways, yeah, Onwa Ifeke is the third moon, but it's also called Onwa Ikenga, and that is the warrior one. So if you look for Onwa Ife, IFE space EKE, then you'll be able to see the stream I did for Onwa Ifeke, and that goes into the Ikenga moon. I think for that moon I did a fast, because a lot of communities, they do a fast in that time as well. And not just in Igbo land, it's also the same moon as Ramadan and Passover, and all over the world you see the exact same fasting type of thing going on at that time. April. Ikenga is also the ram. You'd have Aries, all these things. So yeah, anyways, yeah. But yeah, if you're interested in Onwa Ifeke or the Ikenga moon, check out that video. So let me do this. I'm going to give you guys the link. I want to thank you guys all for coming. I think I'm going to wrap things up. If you guys want to support the channel, you can catch me on patreon.com/the medicine shell. I'm really happy about the community we've been able to build in there. Patrons have access to an in-house Debia who can do readings. I know there's people who have questions as far as like they want to apply things and do more application rather than what I'm doing. If you need help with anything and you think that you can get your answers from that route, then we have an in-house Debia that can help with that. We also have an Odinani group study, so it's similar to this, only it's more interactive, where we have different people discussing and sharing, and we tackle a different topic. So the next one we're going to do is on theta waves. It is theta waves, Mmuo, and children. Theta waves, Mmuo, and children. So if you're interested in that discussion, we're going to be having that discussion on Sunday. It is for premium tier and EZE tier patrons. The group study is. So if you're interested in joining to have that discussion, it's very, 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 very interesting. But theta waves go into anyways, that's for the patrons. But you can look it up if you want. We're going to have a good discussion. I'm looking forward to that. It's theta waves, the moon, and children. Also, some of you guys don't check that page or aren't checking the front page on Patreon. In-house Debia is offering Afa readings. How does that process work? Yeah, the in-house Debia offers Afa readings. I'm recommending him, but where it's not really a linked service or anything like that. So I have his recommendation, his information, all that stuff. If you want to get a reading for Afa and you want your the thing when I was describing AK, all the things that encompass you, that is what's read when you do your Afa. So they'll figure out who you reincarnate from, any ancestors that are following you or that are guiding you, any messages that are being held for you, particularly your Onwa, anything that you have an Onwa over in the world. I had a patron that she had an Onwa on clairvoyance. So part of her Onwa was clairvoyance and that type of thing. And it was really interesting hearing about that. And it was fascinating. I'm not going to say any names or anything like that. Everything's confidential. So, but that was super interesting. But that's what the DB is going to do, the Afa thing. So I give his information, that type of thing. And then you can contact him and set up and go about it. So Michael Irving, thank you very much, my brother. Thank you very much, Michael, for the donation. I've been really interested in how spiritual so many communities find fighting. Yeah, fighting is an entire, you can fight without the spiritual component, but somebody who's fighting with that spiritual component on equal physical ground versus somebody who is not, it's a given, right? So if you look at the way a lot of sports are executed, sports are ritual. It's all ritual. There's a reason it's conducted the way it is. There's a reason things happen the way it happens in sports. If you look at sports, which is ritualized fighting, if you look at things like war, so on and so forth, you'll see a lot of rituals, a lot of understanding. If you check out my Ekwensu Explained video, I go into this concept. So our ancestors conceptualize all these concepts in the idea of Ekwensu. So this moon is for the fruits of our work last moon. Was it last moon or was it 2 moons ago? Onwa, we all planted something in the ground. So during Onwa, what typically happens in a lot of communities is they'll have a cleansing of the community, a ceremony for cleansing the community. This is always the moon. Onwa is the moon where if you hear about masquerades beating people, it's going to happen at this moon. So what happens is the primary masquerade society of that community for those 28 days, Onwa will take over the community. Right. And when they take over the community, they're going to have the masquerades are going to come out and enforce and do certain things to cleanse the land. So in my place, we do Owu in that time. So when we're doing Owu, we're celebrating our history. We're going back to our ancestry. We're also, Owu is linked to the Ofo. I'm going to talk about that in the next video, Ofo explained. And then the Okorosha, which is a part of Owu, but it represents our lineage, our ancestorhood, goes back to where it came from, right? And there's particular things of Owu, a cleansing thing, people who were deemed lazy, people who were, those types of things, like anything in the community, anything you don't want to plant in the ground, anything that you don't want to return, similar to the idea of Mmuo, is addressed Onwa Agun. We address it on, so we did that for Onwa Agun. Now, then once the field is cleared and everything like that, we plant, and then this next moon, or the Onwa Ana, we're going to harvest. We're going to harvest the thing that we planted for Onwa Agon, and then that cycle is going to repeat throughout the year and so forth. Now, this particular one is called Onwa Mmuo. Onwa Mmuo is the resurrection moon. If you think of it in terms of a seed, if you plant a seed, by now there's also Alomchi. So between Alomchi and now, the resurrection moon, it should be coming back into the world, right? So this was 2 moons ago. Yeah. So it was Onwa Agon, then Onwa Alomchi, then this moon, then Onwa Ana. So whatever we planted in the ground should be growing by this point. So it's the resurrection moon, it's the reincarnation moon, it's the return moon, right? So right now, whatever it is you planted in the year, that should be coming back out. And by planting, I mean even at home they see it this way: physical and non-physical. Physical and non-physical. So, but yeah, so right now it should be growing, and then the next moon we're going to harvest. We're going to enjoy the things that we brought into the world. So, ritual fighting, capoeira, 100%. Even if you look at the history of Kung Fu, it's very interesting. Can you work with 2 different cultures at the same time, like Igbo and Dabani? I don't know Dabani too well, or I've never heard the term Dabani before, but yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. You would have to discern, like there may be, if there's a disagreements on whatever, you would have your own chi will tell you which direction to move or what to do. You'd have to discern here and there. But yeah, absolutely. Most of us exist in multiple cultures at once. And it's no different as far as Odinani goes. As much as, based on the history of the world and how things are framed linguistically in this culture, people look at Odinani as a culture or as a religion. But if you tell a 70-year-old man, in Igbo land, oh, do you follow Odinani? He won't know what you're talking about, because Odinani just means as it is, how it is in the land, right? It's just, this is how it is, and this is how we react to how it is. This is what this is, and this is how we react to what this is. So it's just worldview. It's just worldview, right? And you can mix worldviews. It's not, you don't have to, worldview is not doctrine. It's different from doctrine. Now, once you get, can you follow a doctrine and do other things? You're going to have issues with that as far as that goes. But, you can, most of the people who practice Odinani don't know they're practicing Odinani. I think it's something that I've hinted at a lot, because a lot of these the traditions and stuff, they're still alive, they're still practiced. The people practicing them are Christian. They don't know why. Like, for example, Onwa Ago, the masquerades come out on Onwa Ago. Most people don't know why, or a lot of people don't know why they come out at that particular time of the year. They just know that's the season for it. Okay, it's the season. They don't know what the masquerades themselves are doing, but they're doing it. So that's what it is. So yeah, most of us live in multiple cultures and interface with them. And Odinani is a culture. It's a perspective. It's a way of seeing things. So you can mix it with different things if it works for you. A lot of our ancestors in the diaspora, as far as like the transatlantic slave trade and so forth, one of the things you'll notice is that they mixed the African with a lot of what they encountered in the New World, which is Catholicism, sometimes Hinduism, sometimes all these different things that they encountered. And people say, oh, they did that to hide what they were doing. Maybe, but that is a hypothesis. It's not actual fact, because if you understand the African perspective of it, it's very easy to add things and that type of thing. It's about what works, right? It's about what works. So if you call upon Jesus and that somehow works for you, you're not going to throw that away. It worked. You know what I mean? If you call upon Ahmadiyya, nothing happened, then you're going to throw it away. That kind of thing. They said the proverb in, it's a very popular proverb, is that when an Irishie gets too arrogant, we show it the tree it came from. You understand? Igbo people are known for being able to, they say that Igbo people used to cut up their gods, right? Like, you can go to your altar or your chi, they call it your chi. And then you can say, this is what I'm going to, and this is the thing I'm going to do in my life, yada, 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 yada. And, X amount of years or maybe X amount of days, however you feel, if that thing doesn't work, you can return and throw the whole altar in the trash and start again. You understand? And when the Europeans came, that was confusing them. It's like, wait, now I thought that was your God. Why did you just machete it? But that thing wasn't working, My chi is my chi, and that thing, it wasn't connecting. It wasn't making things happen. So that type of thing. So once you understand the African perspective, you'll actually understand it's incorporating different aspects is a natural facet of it. It's a natural facet of it because it's based off what works. It's very similar to how we cook. One thing that all over the world, Black people have all in common all over the world, is that we don't use measures. we kind of don't really use recipes either. You just kind of feel it out, right? So, oh, how do you cook XYZ? You just make it happen. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, a lot of you, if you people are Igbo, go and watch your mother cook and ask her how she made something. She might not even be able to tell you. She's gonna put the things that make it work. And if okay, we're using gari, okay, oatmeal, we're gonna replace it with oatmeal now. Oatmeal works better. That kind of thing. It's whatever works. It's not a doctrine thing. So, if our ancestors didn't believe in counting things, why did they make exception for counting moons? That's a good question. That's a very good question. Our ancestors believed in counting things, but our ancestors believe that if you count things, you're you're inviting the end of it. You're inviting the end of it. So that is a good question. I don't think I have a good answer for you. I would say the moons are cyclical. So even if you count that, you're going to return back to Onwa, which is the first moon, sometime in February. So I maybe because it's cyclical, but that's a really good question. But they don't count like people, right? Because people aren't people are finite. You can run out of people. So when the Europeans came for census, they say that, hey, we don't count people. Or you don't count your wealth. You don't count what you have. Somebody asks you how many children you have. Kind of, it's like, why are you asking, that kind of thing. It's just a funny thing that carries over. Example of singular diaspora, which you're describing. Vibration cooking. There you go. Thank you very much. So anyways, let me wrap things up. So as I said, we have the in-house Dibia. We have the Odinani group study. What else do we have in there? And then this calendar that I'm discussing with the 13 moons, the different rituals, and the 4 market days. So I found a way to make a digital calendar that syncs with your Google Calendar. I have the least issue with Google Calendar. Sometimes we've gotten to work with Yahoo and Apple. But it syncs with your Google Calendar so that you're seeing these things roll. You don't have to wait for me to tell you that the new moon is coming. You get it automatically. All that comes with every tier. As far as the Patreon go, and then ultimately or finally the access to my library or my study library. My study library has all of the documents that I use in doing my research. When I do my research, I add to it maybe every other day, very regularly. So I add to it very regularly, and we're up to just hundreds of books, articles, studies, firsthand accounts, different examples. I have things like on Insibity and all these different things too. So all of that is available at patreon.com/themedicineshell. My next video is going to be on the Onwa. So subscribe and hit like if you haven't already. Hit subscribe and hit like if you haven't already. The next video is a very important one. If you understand the Onwa, a lot of the things that I have to stop and think before I talk, it's all going to connect for you. It's going to reach a point where you won't even need to hear it from me. And I'm saying this as somebody with a YouTube channel, but because it's what it is. So the Onwa one is going to tie a lot of things together for you. It's going to tie a lot of things together for you. By the end of that one, you probably should be able to teach some of these things. Next moon, the harvest moon taken seriously by farmers. Is the next Onwa the harvest moon? Yeah, absolutely. It's the most serious moon in all of Igbo land. Now, some communities have this moon as their harvest. Not many, but a few have this moon. And that's usually tied to something in their own history, right? The next moon is the New Yam Festival, is the paramount celebration in our culture. It is a paramount, and this is throughout the continent, is the New Yam or Iriji, right? The New Yam or the eating of the yam is the paramount one. That's the one that ties the entire community together. And I'll give more details on how that's celebrated and so forth if you're interested in incorporating in your own life. So again, support on patreon.com/themedicineshell. As always, this is Derek. Yeah, that's my name. As always, this is Derek Ofadarugwa, and I want to thank you guys for coming. Happy Ilo Mmuo. Onogade. Chukuka. Gozie Nonine. Thank you.